Hello, my name is Marcia Spink, and I'm the Associate Director for Policy and Science in the Air Protection Division of EPA Region 3. This is Module 8, the final training module for Clean Air 101, and it covers Titles 8, 9, 10, and 11 of the Clean Air Act Amendments of 1990. This training is brought to you by the Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards. Title 8 is entitled Miscellaneous Provisions. The first part it covers is provisions regarding the Outer Continental Shelf, or OCS. It's a program to control air pollution from sources on the Outer Continental Shelf. These are sources within 25 miles of the shore, and they're required to meet the same standards as onshore areas. There are exemptions possible if the administrator finds that compliance is technologically infeasible or will cause an unreasonable threat to health and safety. States adjacent to the Outer Continental Shelf sources may implement and enforce requirements if approved by the administrator. Now, sources that have recently had to be permitted on the Outer Continental Shelf have included ocean-based wind farms for energy production. Visibility provisions. From 1991 to 1996, $8 million was allocated to conduct studies which identified and evaluated sources and source regions for visibility impairment to Class 1 areas. The research included expansion of monitoring in Class 1 areas, assessment of sources affecting visibility, adaptation of regional air quality models and studies of atmospheric chemistry, and physics pertaining to visibility. The administrator can establish visibility transport regions if two or more effective states petition that the interstate transport of air pollutants is negatively affecting visibility in Class 1 areas. In conjunction with the transport region, a transport commission shall be designated. The commission will evaluate data, studies, and information pertaining to adverse impacts on visibility. Based on the evaluation, action may be taken to remedy any negative impacts. And there was a commission actually enacted by law, and that was the Grand Canyon Visibility Transport Commission. International border areas. This provision provided that an implementation plan or revision shall be approved by the administrator if it meets all of the Act's requirements except attainment of the NAAQS because of emissions emanating from outside the United States. States that can prove that they cannot meet ozone, carbon monoxide, or PM10 attainment levels by the applicable deadline because of emissions from outside of the U.S. shall not be penalized. The next title of the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments was Required Clean Air Research. And the following slides will go over the kind of research that was required to be conducted by Title IX of the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. Monitoring and modeling. Research for improved methods and techniques for measuring individual air pollutants and complex mixtures and for addressing urban and regional ozone were required. Maintenance of a national monitoring network to assess the status and trends of air emissions, deposition, air quality, surface water quality, forest conditions, and visibility were required. Health effects. EPA was required to study the short and long-term health effects associated with exposure to air pollutants and develop methods to assess risks from these pollutants. An interagency task force led by EPA had to coordinate this research. EPA was required to prepare environmental health assessments for all listed hazardous air pollutants. Ecosystem. Studies for improving the understanding of ecosystem effects from individual and multiple air pollutants, including the effects of air pollution on water quality, forests, biological diversity, and other terrestrial and aquatic systems exposed to air pollutants, was also required by Title IX of the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments. Accidental releases. Research for improvements in predictive models and response technology for accidental releases of dense gases was required. EPA had to oversee the research using the Department of Energy's Liquefied Gaseous Fuel Spill Test Facility for the experimental work. Pollution prevention and emissions control. Research was required to develop technologies and strategies for air pollution prevention from stationary and area sources. Acid Precipitation Research Program, a continuation of research by an intra-agency task force was required to review the status of research activities conducted to date and to submit to Congress a revised plan that identified key research gaps and established a program to address current and future research priorities. EPA was required to sponsor specialized acid deposition studies and to have the results of its research efforts included in task force reports. Clean alternative fuels. Research was required to identify, characterize, and predict air emissions and other potential environmental effects associated with alternative fuels. EPA was required to determine the risks and benefits to human health and the environment from alternative fuels relative to those from gasoline. Other studies. EPA was required to coordinate research with other appropriate federal agencies. EPA was required to study the control technology used in other industrialized countries. EPA was required to conduct a $6 million research effort on the effects of acid deposition on waters in the Adirondack region. Title 10 of the Clean Air Act Amendments of 1990 is for disadvantaged business concerns. It's a general provision. In providing any research relating to the 1990 Clean Air Act Amendments, EPA shall, to the extent practicable, require that not less than 10% of total federal funding for such research be made available to disadvantaged business concerns. Title 11, Clean Air Employment Transition Assistance. Now, the Clean Air Act Amendments of 1990 amended Title III of the Job Training Partnership Act. An additional $50 million per year from 1991 through 1995 was allocated to the Job Training and Partnership Act to assist dislocated workers, the majority of whom were high-sulfur coal miners, dislocated because of implementation of the acid rain title. 95% of the funding was to go to the worker assistance programs, and the other remaining 5% was to be used to administer Title III of the Job Training and Partnership Act. The Department of Labor administered this program. Benefits. In addition to the benefits available to dislocated workers through Title III of the Job Training and Partnership Act, people were able to receive job search allowances, relocation assistance, and needs-related payments and extended monetary assistance. Extended monetary assistance was made available to dislocated workers who had exhausted their unemployment insurance benefits as long as they were in qualified training or educational programs. This is the end of Clean Air Act 101, Module 8, and it is in fact the end of the entire training course, Clean Air Act 101.